Welcome back for yet another top 10 list for McGTV. For today, I thought I'd focus on a very particular niche that I find myself gravitating towards quite a bit with regards to movies and the music that is contained within them. Yes, I'm here to talk about my top 10 favorite movie soundtracks for movies that many would probably deem bad. Now, when I say bad, usually that goes by whatever the critical consensus was of those films at the time. Some of these movies have gained a very big cult following, maybe due in part to their kick-ass music. But some of them have kind of stayed where they are and are known to kind of be the worst of the worst. I try to find a little silver lining in a lot of my movies for the most part, so I consider a lot of these films on my list guilty pleasures at best. Now, pertaining to the soundtracks in particular, these are songs or music that may have been incorporated into the film for background or environmental purposes at some point, or were inspired by the film. So you're not going to find any Disney movie type soundtracks on here, or any movie soundtracks that have the characters actually break out into orchestrated songs and productions in the middle of the actual movie. And also, due to the fact that I don't want to fear retaliation from the big overlords in the industries, I'm not going to be able to play samples of the songs for you on this list. But I will put them down here so that you can go check out these tracks yourself, because I want to be able to share at least a couple of tracks that I personally enjoy off of each of these selections. So let's just get right into this music fest. Spawn! Yeah, the John Leguizamo, Michael Jai White something fest showed up on here. Mainly it's for its ability to, in its album and its soundtrack, combine rock and techno or electronica elements into either songs we were already familiar with or some original compositions. A couple of selections that I personally enjoy off of this album are Can't You Trip Like I Do by Filter and the Crystal Method, Long Hard Road Out of Hell by Marilyn Manson and Sneaker Pimps, and Torn Apart by Stabbing Westward and Wink. The soundtrack for the film definitely does convey this otherworldly, satanic focus that they're trying to make for Spawn. It's just a shame that the movie itself is so hilariously inept at being able to be dark or gritty. Striptease. Yep, despite Demi Moore's characters mad on for Eurythmics and Annie Lennox, there actually are a couple of tracks on this soundtrack that I really enjoy. I mean, you can't go wrong with Blondie, The Tide is High, the pint-sized wonder that is Prince with his If I Was Your Girlfriend, and my personal favorite, Billy Idol's Money Money. Yeah, you'd think a movie featuring Demi Moore naked would probably garner a little bit more attention or praise. Nah, not so much the case. I will admit the comedy is pretty hard to sit through and the story is hilarious, and poor Burt Reynolds looks like he wants to just walk off and grab a donut. But hey, at least the tunes are good. David Lynch's Dune. Now, this is kind of an unusual selection amongst this list because this soundtrack actually only comprises two artists on it: the band Toto and Brian Eno. But Toto's score is actually pretty fun and engaging, and Brian Eno's Prophecy theme is a much needed kind of boost to this sci-fi opera adventure that can maybe be a little bit too long in the tooth or a little too cerebral. Definitely the highlight for me though is the end credits theme, Take My Hand. Just watching all those stoic-faced portraits of the cast roll by over top this synth pop rock extravaganza is pretty fun to watch. It really just depends what mood I'm in. Sometimes I can be glued to the screen for Dune, and sometimes I can just kind of tune it out as background noise. But the music always comes to the forefront. One question though, you cast Sting in this movie, yet you couldn't squeeze one tune out of him? Come on, guys. Last Action Hero. I love this movie, I'm not gonna lie. It's dumb, it's silly, but it's a spoof on all those great movie and action tropes of the late 80s, early 90s that we were really kind of probably sick of at that point. But nothing beats out kind of its killer eclectic soundtrack that includes such selections like Two Steps Behind by Def Leppard, the very appropriately titled Big Gun by AC/DC, and Megadeth's Angry Again, which was actually nominated in 1993 at the Grammys for Best Metal Performance. I love everything about Last Action Hero, but definitely having those tunes playing in the background of this out-of-control movie world with Arnold, Tywin Lannister, and Salieri all dancing around in there somewhere. It's a treat. Mission Impossible 2. Alright, first off, forget that stupid Take a Look Around by Limp Bizkit that somehow incorporates the Mission Impossible bassline theme into its song. Ugh. Mission Impossible 2 is kind of the black sheep of the series, I feel, and I don't even own a copy because it just feels so out of place with all the other cool espionage stuff going on in the other films. But there are highlights on its soundtrack that I thoroughly enjoy. Rocket Science by the Pimps is a pretty good track. The Foo Fighters and Brian May team up for a pretty decent cover of Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar, and the underappreciated Diffuser with their song Karma. I may not be accepting this mission from John Woo anytime soon, but at least I can take a couple of decent tunes from it. Godzilla. The Roland Emmerich version. Whoo! Boy, this movie's a turd. And I'll admit there are a couple of missteps on its album, such as the somehow popular Come With Me starring Puffy and Jimmy Page ripping his Kashmir riff, and the Godzilla Roar remix of Green Day's Brain Stew. But there are plenty of gems on this album. A pretty awesome cover of David Bowie's Heroes by the Wallflowers, Deeper Underground by Jamiroquai, and Air by Ben Folds 5. Yeah, we might know this version of Godzilla more for its weird iguana-shaped head and the inclusion of Bueller in a role as an action hero, but I wholeheartedly recommend checking out the album for this movie. The Matrix Reloaded. I'll admit, there's a couple of things I enjoy about The Matrix Reloaded, and for the most part, it's not as bad as Revolutions. But there's great things I love about the soundtrack, whether it's Sleeping Awake by P.O.D., which was actually inspired in its lyrics by The Matrix and incorporates a lyric about Zion, to Rage Against the Machine's Calm Like a Bomb. But for me, the highlight is the Oakenfold remix of Dave Matthews Band's When the World Ends. It's not quite as good as the original version of the song, but I do kind of appreciate how they could take the tune and skew it a little to be dark trip-hop. We all might be living in a simulated virtual reality, but at least we got some pretty kickin' tunes here. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, even though I love the movie, it didn't really go over so well with critics at the time. And I know everyone probably was expecting me to put the second movie's soundtrack on here just on Ninja Rap alone. But frankly, Ninja Rap is overrated, and there's plenty of more energetic and edgier tunes on the first film's soundtrack before it got all kid-friendly. Stuff like This Is What We Do by MC Hammer, Spin That Wheel by High Tech 3, 9.95 by Spunkadelic. But for me, the creme de la creme is Partners in Crime with Turtle Power. Cause in this day and age, who could ask for more? The crime wave was high with Muggings Mysterious. Yep. That's a wrap, I know. Batman Forever. This is essentially the movie soundtrack that set the standard for all comic book movie soundtracks. Gotta have a bunch of big artists on there to kind of exemplify mediocre material, but have that one song that'll stand out the test of time and always be remembered to be associated with this particular film. We'll get to it. First up, a couple of honorable mentions from this soundtrack. Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me by U2. A cover of The Damned Smash It Up by The Offspring, and Bad Days by The Flaming Lips. But I know what you're all waiting for me to say is the best of this album, and it is You Can't Beat the Kiss from a Rose by Seal. Hell, that song alone is half the reason I went out and bought the full album from him. Oh yeah, take that, Bat Dance. Empire Records. Now, this is a bit of a cheat because the movie centers around a bunch of teenagers working in a record store. So of course there's gonna be a shit ton of music that pops up in the narrative from time to time. But man, if you can get the complete list of tracks throughout the entire film and not just the 14 or 13 that they put on an official release, you are a god. Because there's way too many songs on here for me to list, so I'll just try to come up with a couple here. You Can't Beat the Gin Blossoms Till I Hear It From You, one of my personal favorites, Toad the Wet Sprocket's Crazy Life, some classics like Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles, Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits, and a little tune I wasn't even aware of to begin with called Can't Stop Losing Myself by Dirt Clods. But the piece de resistance in this superb soundtrack has to be Say No More, Mon Amour, performed by the fictitious character Rex Manning. Cause we just celebrated Rex Manning Day a couple of days ago, and I can't think of a better way than to find that track and have a little dance on a beach with your own frilly, fluffy vest and whatever the hell he's doing with his hair. So yeah, my all-time favorite soundtrack to a bad movie, Empire Records. But what are some of your favorite soundtracks to quote-unquote bad movies? Let me know below. See you next time for another Top 10 list.